Okay, I think we'll begin the session now. Thank you for joining us today. We're today going to talk about acing US college admissions and recruitments, and we're going to get some excellent tips from experts. We've got the Collegify team, who is an expert consultant on admissions and recruitments. And we also have with us Sherman Baldwin, who's the CEO of LCR Capital Partners, who will talk a little bit about his experience in the domain, as well as how the visa or residency in the US is an important thing to plan for students who want to have a successful career there. So with that, I think we'll launch a little bit into introductions. I will talk about myself a little bit first. I lead the India region for LCR Capital Partners. LCR is actually a US based private investment and advisory services firm. We are based in Connecticut, Westport, and we are actually across, we work with investors across 30 countries. We have 7 locations worldwide. We are in India, we're in Mumbai, we're in Dubai, Singapore. We have an office in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and 3 offices in the US. Hopefully we're also going to very shortly expand in Europe. So that's a little bit about us. And what we do is we specialize in cross-border families, their investment migration, alternative residencies, and offshore wealth management. So that is our forte. We operate in this tight niche of, we understand what migrating families require in terms of financial services, and we have a range of services in that entire gamut. So be it alternative residency or wealth management or mortgage solutions, it could be insurance or advice on taxation. We help with clients with all of these aspects. With that, I'll stop on LCR, and let's talk a little bit about Collegify. Collegify is a full service education consultancy. They specialize in admissions for foreign universities, and they also have several e-learning products that I think a lot of you students will be familiar with. They provide personalized mentoring to undergrad and postgrad students with, across different academic backgrounds. And today with, from Collegify, we've got Adarsh Khandelwal and we've got Vaiju Manian. So Vaiju is actually a highly sought after career counselor. She's got decades of experience successfully advising students at top US academic institutions, ranging from undergrad to master's and PhD. She's currently at Columbia, where she coaches and prepares MBA students for their careers after business school. She specializes in guiding international students through the entire process, from building professional networks and networking skills to searching for jobs and navigating the visa process to interviewing and negotiation. So beyond her expertise, her advisees also describe her as a very thoughtful and resourceful person with a personal and supportive style of advising and counseling. So that's a little bit about Vaiju. I think I will also now talk a little bit about Sherman, who I introduced very briefly earlier. Sherman Baldwin is the CEO of LCR Capital Partners. He's responsible for leading all the aspects of the firm, including driving growth strategies across our different regions. Sherman actually has an experience of around 20 years of P&L leadership and strategy and transformation work for Fortune 500 companies, private equity firms, and even the Pentagon. So before LCR Capital Partners, he was managing director at Accenture, where he was serving as a global client executive officer. And he started his business actually at McKinsey, where he was an engagement manager, developing growth strategies for companies in the aerospace and defense, computer and telecom space. From 87 to 1995, he served in the US Navy as a carrier pilot, and he was a strategic planner for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and special assistant to the Secretary of the Navy. He comes from, he has a master's from the George Washington University and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. He's also currently a lecturer on innovation and leadership at Yale. So I think a very correct person to also talk about admissions and recruitments, and we can definitely describe him as an expert there. Welcome, Sherman. Now let's talk a little bit about Adarsh. Adarsh is the co-founder of Collegify, and he himself is a very reputed admissions counselor and edtech entrepreneur. He's also empaneled with the Forbes Business Council. So he's got more than a decade years of experience. He has successfully mentored over 7,500 students, guiding them towards their desired courses and scholarships. He has a long-standing relationship with a lot of school boards and top university representatives, and he's very well versed with all the changes that keep happening in the admission space. In 2018, he received the Stanford Teacher Tribute for excellent teaching and contribution in the education space. So welcome, Adarsh. So I welcome all of you, and I think to start off, I would like to call upon Adarsh. You can actually start with the topic of the day, which is acing college admissions, and what your views on those are.
Thank you, Shilpa and team LCR. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to sort of, address the audience today. I will screen share and briefly share the presentation. Is my screen audible? Sorry, visible?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Right. Talking about the admission cycle, it's obviously getting extremely competitive year on year, and we see that the admission percentages are reducing, right? So, I mean, what we saw in 2020 with the US top schools, primarily it's reduced to 50% in terms of the acceptance rate. This has happened primarily because more and more students are inclined to apply. The numbers in India is really growing in a very fast capacity, and the competition and the competitive environment has become very, very difficult, right? So for admission committees, you need to understand what additionally you need to do to sort of create a successful admission journey. Some of the problems, right? Parent problem. There are so many universities. How to manage the application timeline? What is the application process looks like? And what is the best time to start, right? That is primarily some of the areas where parents are unable to figure out. And for children, and for students who are applying, it is the essays, it is the competitive tests they need to take, the standardized test. What can they do to sort of make the result more impactful and things like that, right? So I will be covering some of these aspects. As mentioned, I've been in the space for a while, and multiple awards and uh, recognition has come through the work I've done. Um, yeah. So beginning, how can we make you stand out as an applicant, right? So this is primarily a statistics which I want to show that between a student's journey, a 50% dependency is on the high school grade, right? So it's very important to maintain the 9, 10, 11, 12 academic grade. Your standardized test scores approximately 20% weightage when it comes to admissions. And the remaining 30% is your extracurricular, right? Which primarily focuses on the projects, the leaderships, the internships, the community engagement. And this is an area, where we navigate you individually, where we work with you on a one-to-one capacity to tell you what works, how to present yourself in a more efficient manner, how to build, what kind of internships you need to do, what kind of career assessments you need to do. So primarily, this is how the statistics looks like, right? When it comes to the admission committee deciding you from the competition. What do you look at when you look at your profile? So, right, these are the different areas from a resume perspective. You have to focus on your academics. You have to focus on the leadership ability within school, outside, the internships you're doing, the community engagements, the projects you do, and the extracurricular activities, right? So our journey as admission counselors to sort of package all this together and to make it all look good for you. SAT. So SAT is obviously a very important assessment when it comes to standardized test. We have developed a e-learning platform. You can log into the collegify.com website and you can get an assessment, right? It's all machine learning, artificial intelligence, predictability, score analysis, and very focused platform which can sort of help you assess. SAT plays a very important role, obviously, when it comes to SAT success. So you need to begin the SAT journey grade 11 primarily. I mean, grade 11 is the last you can do in terms of the standardized test. Working on a short list. So, I mean, at least from a Collegify standpoint, we are very certain to make the entire shortlist very unbiased. How to segregate the list between Ivy League, how to create a list where, you also have some safety net institutions, the reach, discussing the finances with the family, how to make it, all workable for you. US is a very heavy investment, right? When it comes to the undergraduate journey. So how to make it affordable is obviously a counselor's job. And that's what we do, right? We work with you independently based on your finances and local reality. And we see what is the best possible way to make the US admission very affordable. This is a timeline primarily between a grade 9 to 10, where you are exploring your interests and you're identifying areas, you're working on developing what is should be your focus point. Grade 10, ideally, you should be solidifying any idea you've developed. 11, 12 is primarily implementations, right, of the projects, of the leadership ability you're building in. And finally, grade 12 is all about, making your application, networking, finding time to sort of make everything work. 50, 60 essays you need to write. So we advise you each and every essay. And this is primarily the entire profile timeline journey. Similarly, this is again application timeline journey where for a student who's in grade 12, you can see how the entire from March to March, how the entire academic journey is, right? So November is when your application starts getting filed. That is where your early decision is. And then we sort of take you through the journey. These are some of the testimonials which we've received very recently. Shreya went to Cornell on a Tata scholarship. And I mean, she wrote a very personal note. Ananya just got an admission to NCAD, which is a B school, right? So, I mean, ideally, so, I mean, when you work with an admission counselor, it's very important that we do the reflections with you when it comes to essays, where we really focus in building your strength, identifying your weakness, making things work in terms of how to organize your timeline, every single area, right? A lot of teaching and training is done. And obviously it's not a very simple process, right? It's a time consuming process, and we work with you, and there are mistakes you make. And, it's a process of self-discovery as well, the entire admissions. This is a student who's made it to a Genome Fisher program. The University of Pennsylvania, the management and technology is one of the most difficult programs in the world. 50, 55 kids get in. So primarily one child per country. And if you look at Seher, you can Google Seher and you'll find more about her resume. So she was the recipient of the Dyna Award. So we worked with her across her testings, across her leadership resumes, across her social project, which sort of worked on an impact area. And obviously a lot of school and school leading engagements. Very, very personal essays, right? Essays is where one of the areas where, I think she really stood out. So this is another testimonial. And yeah, that is where Seher is. So, in short, the entire journey from your profile building to helping you identify what are the important areas, what should be the strategy. Obviously, pandemic, US admission has become quite competitive. I showed you some stats right in the beginning. So it's very important to be able to identify the universities, identify the value in terms of what is the right university value match between you and the institution you want to go to. And probably, work with a plan. So that is what we do, right? Bring a consistency way of working. An application is not a one-day work. Every single day you keep adding little, and you keep just doing the small elements to sort of create a large difference. So with Collegeify, I mean, the entire journey is not only about college admission. There is a service which Vaiju is going to now talk about, which primarily focuses on the entire journey of how do you also successfully graduate, right? As admission consultants, we always talk about how to get in. And with Indian mindset and generally the Asian mindset, right, is the idea is to go to the highest possible, the IVs. But what you need to also understand is a lot has to happen, right? Once you're within the institution as well, for creating a successful journey. That is where Vaiju comes in, and that is where she is going to navigate about the entire aspect of post-college journey. Vaiju, over to you.
I have my own PowerPoint. So if you want to exit, I will take over. Thank you so much, Adarsh, for that. That was very helpful. And thanks to LCR as well for giving us the opportunity to present. So give me a second. I'll share my screen. Why am I not seeing mine? Give me 1 second, please. Oh, for some reason, I exited out. There we go. So with Adarsh, he successfully takes you onto a campus of your choice, and let's all get into that happy space. Your student is now in a university of their choice, super excited. You've just dropped them off and then you leave, right? And then what happens? Now the student's challenge now starts. It's the next phase of their challenge, if I were to say. And they have to juggle three things when they are here. They juggle their academics, their social life, and careers. And all three are important. A lot of parents and students tend to focus heavily on academics. Then they tend to focus on social and kind of reserve the careers for the end. But then you as a parent are thinking this. With college costs being sky high these days, you're actually thinking about the ROI of this degree. Some of you may invest $150,000 to $250,000. Then at the end of the day, what is the return on investment? And an obvious question there is, who's watching out for your student? And is there a trusted career advisor who can actually help them? Because the career advisors are the ones who focus on the ROI. If you think of college admissions as input, the career office actually focuses on the income. And the answer to that is yes, indeed there is. And we are the CSA, the Career Success Academy, where we believe that if you're prepared, you will make luck happen for yourself. Think about this. For yourself or for your student, have you ever used a tennis coach or some kind of an athletic coach to help them get better at their game? Or perhaps a tutor to help ace an exam or do well in classes? Or even a fitness coach to get better at what you're doing or perhaps lose some weight? Then why not use a career coach for one of the most important decision in your student's life? Think about when you went to college and you had to search for a job. Did it happen by accident? Or was it a carefully thought out, intentional process? And if you think about the job search today, it has become so competitive. And the pandemic has taught us that literally anybody can apply from anywhere for a position, right? So what does it actually look like from a student's perspective when they're on campus? Where are these jobs posted and when are they posted? How do I actually find them? And how do I actually find an internship or a full-time role that matches my interests? And if I do get an offer, how do I actually negotiate it? And how am I certain that I'm making the right decision? And from an international student's perspective, these are even more critical. Why is it? Because international students do not have a safety net. If they don't land an internship for the summer, chances are they have to go home to do an internship back home. Worse yet, if they don't land a full-time role within 60 days upon graduation, then they pretty much have to pack up their bags and go back to their home country. So this is a very, very critical decision that students have to make when they are here. So Career Success Academy steps in at all these intervals, right? So who are we and what do we do? So we step in fairly early, like, Adarsh will pass his clients on to me. And right from the freshman year, I will help them identify their interests and think about possibilities. It is not just enough to talk to students about generic things. We actually create a plan that they can implement. And the plan consists of, calendaring and doing specific things at specific times. Because I, as a career coach, am aware of when jobs are posted, where they are posted, and how to actually reach out to hiring managers and so on. And finally, this process can be very, very anxiety ridden. And a career coach's job is also to be a cheerleader and a part-time therapist, if you think about it. So what do I do? In my day job at Columbia Business School, I work with students across the spectrum, not just the MBAs, but also the MS students. I'll talk a little bit about it. And for these students over the years, given my background, I've realized that it's helpful to develop a curriculum around this. I taught math for about 10 years, so I have a very prescriptive approach to this process. So we start with self-exploration. So a lot of students, what they do is they figure out that their friends are applying to jobs, and then they just randomly start applying to positions. And this is where a lot of anxiety sets in. So we kind of we've come up with this curriculum, but the first step is identify who you are. What do you like to do? Where do you excel at? And are there gaps in your background for the kind of roles that you are pursuing? The second thing is, where are the companies? If you were to ask a college student, and by the way, this is true of Columbia MBA students as well, where would you like to work? The typical answer would be the top 5 technology companies: Apple, Google, Facebook, or Meta, right? And if you ask them about banks, it's always Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan. Now, this is where they and every single student across the country are applying. What do you think the chances are of getting into those companies? Let's not forget that there are literally thousands and thousands of companies that are doing very, very meaningful work. So we help them identify other companies where the chances of getting in for their first role is actually higher. And then 80% of jobs in the US are found through networking. So there is huge value in developing a professional network. So we help them identify alumni and people in relevant roles that they can reach out to. In the process, we also help them create a very powerful resume and LinkedIn. And finally, coach them through the interview process. So what I do is I can either work with students one-on-one, or we put groups of students together, almost like a classroom, and run them through the process. Typically, we do 4 to 5 sessions for each student. The goal is to help these students become independent. The material that they learn is not just for their internship or their first job. It's actually for a lifetime of job searches. Think about it. If I were to meet a student who's 18 or 20 years old, and if they're going to retire at the age of 65, there's a 40-year career that we're talking about. So the material that I work with students on is age agnostic, major agnostic, country agnostic. Right? It doesn't matter. It is replicable. So what do? I work currently, as I said, with Columbia Business students, both the MBAs as well as we have specialty master students. And my focus is on international students. Now, international students come with their own unique set of challenges. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, with job applications coming from pretty much all over the world, they have to navigate their CPT, which is a curricular practical training visa, OPT, which is the optional practical training visa, and then they have to think about their H-1B, and then finally about their green card process. So in addition to thinking about just the job search, they also have to navigate their visa status. And this is where I think LCR would be a very valuable partner. I will actually let Sherman talk about this, but I have had students on the EB-5 path whose lives are actually simplified because their green card has already been started, right? So they have a little less anxiety and an easier way of representing themselves to companies saying, you don't have to worry about sponsoring me. I already am working with an attorney's office to help expedite this process. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Sherman, who will now talk about what his company does to help international students successfully navigate not just academics, but also careers in the US. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaiju. I hope I'm back. It looked like I just had a connection difficulty. Reedy, are you great? Thank you. Thank you, Adarsh. Thank you, Vaiju. And tell you a little bit about LCR Capital Partners. We are a private investment and advisory services firm that's very focused on international high net worth families. We provide advisory services, mortgages, loans, and other services. We are very focused on immigrant investor programs, particularly the EB-5 program, which I'll talk a little bit more about. We also help families with the Portugal Golden Visa and the Grenada Citizenship Program. And then we offer wealth management to our clients as well. We're an SEC registered investment advisor and have various alternative assets available on our platform. Next slide, please, Reedy. So as Vaiju and Adarsh have been talking about, international student mobility has only grown dramatically over the last 20 years. In fact, 3 times over the last 20 years. And most of those students are interested in universities in the United States or in Western Europe. Next slide, please. And as you can see from here, India in particular is a leader in sending students overseas. China has the most students that come to the United States and Western Europe, but India is second and is a significant leader in terms of their interest in education overseas. Next slide, please. So what are some of the challenges that are faced by international students? One, as Adarsh was saying, the acceptance rates are very low. I think those were overall acceptance rates that Adarsh was describing. Frankly, it's even more competitive for international students in many respects because the numbers are so high and you're applying within an international student pool. The professional opportunities are also quite challenging to get internships and full-time jobs. Vaiju can certainly help students with that, but it's challenging. Many US companies are not willing to sponsor international students. The tuition rates are higher because if you're an international student, you don't qualify for in-state tuition at some of our state schools, and private school tuitions don't distinguish between state or out of state or international, and their tuitions are even higher. And then visa delays, complications, denials, waiting for permanent residency. It's a very complicated process. Next slide, please. So one of the benefits of the EB-5 program, which is an immigrant investor program where families can invest into US, typically real estate projects, and then over time, you'll earn a green card for permanent residency. One of the benefits of that is if a family goes down that path earlier, then the student is no longer in the international student pool, and the acceptance rates mathematically are higher. It enables you to compete more successfully for internships while you're in college in the United States, because you don't require a sponsorship of being an international student. You're in the process of becoming a green card holder. Once you graduate, you'd have the ability to do anything that you want, to start your own business without restrictions if you have the conditional green card or the permanent green card. And so it gives you a great deal more freedom in terms of how you go about pursuing your professional career. And the last point is there's no dependency on a company to sponsor you, and you can join startup companies or start your own company. Next slide, please. So, we believe we've been in this market 10 years now and believe that EB-5 is definitely the easiest and fastest way to achieve permanent residency in the United States. The time it takes, it's about 24 to 36 months to get your conditional green card. There are 2 types of investments, either direct or through a regional center. The EB-5 program provides residency for the full family and any children under the age of 21. And there is the potential for a path to citizenship after receiving the permanent green card. The investment level is significant. It's an $800,000 investment. And, it's about a 5-year to 7-year period of time to go through the process. So in conjunction with advising that Collegify and CSA provide, thinking through whether or not this kind of a immigrant investor program makes sense for your family is an important thing to do. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shilpa and we can open it up for some Q&A.
Thank you, all of you. That was quite insightful. I think our attendees here have received and understood what the challenges are, both in terms of recruitment, admissions, and also about making it less anxious for themselves by maybe perhaps looking at permanent residency, citizenship, etc. So with that, I think we've got some questions, and I think the first one seems like it's for Adarsh. Adarsh, you talked about some 60 odd essays. I mean, what are the essays that, applications usually ask? I mean, what is the kind of, what are they looking for, and what is the volume of work that's required? I mean, how much time do you need to devote per essay?
Yes, so essays are actually quite intimidating. It's quite lengthy, right? So for US, there is a common application essay, which is a personality essay, primarily a reflection, right, on any of your journey, any of your failure, what have you learned from it. And there are so many things, right, with students' life ongoing. So there is lack of time for them to sort of be able to think through as to what they should be writing. There is a rat race going on, right, writing exams, and therefore there is very less time. There are supplemental essays additionally. So every college, for example, Harvard, or it's a UPenn, they have their own supplemental essays, right, as to why do you want to come to them. Fundamentally, here a lot of research is needed on the student side. What interests them, they need to sort of read about. They need to talk to alumni. They need to, speak to admissions, attend their webinars, understand the university, right, before just applying by the rank, right. Primarily, the decision making of all the Asian students across is based on rank, right, that I want to go to a ABC university based on the rank. They would not go and deep dive and do a networking call and sort of chat. So a lot of leadership essays, failure essays, influenced person you've influenced. Stanford essay for 30 has been, what are you most passionate about and why? So primarily, the entire process is very writing heavy. And from a perspective, right, Indian or international, we are not very pro writing, right? I mean, we are very, it's a rote learning concept. So this switch is why they've built in the application. It's quite lengthy, it's quite detailed, and fair amount of 1.5 years is needed to sort of sort it out. It's close to 30,000, 35,000 word in terms of the quantity, which needs to be done in a span of 4 months. So, I mean, if you have to write an essay a day, basically, and for every student, it gets intimidating. For the parents, it gets intimidating. So, therefore, we step in to tell you how it all works. And it's the job of the admission counselor, right, to sort of guide you, navigate you, and tell you what are the do's and don'ts when it comes to the process.
Understood, Adarsh. Thanks for that. I think the next one's for you, Vaiju. You did mention about career opportunities and how do we find where these opportunities are. So, are there any particular opportunities that you think some of these students can focus on as soon as they enter? Like, how do they become proactive about this?
Sure. So if you look at an undergraduate student, they have 3 summers in the US and 1 upon graduation for their full-time role. So the focus would be on building a professional network when they come in. Reach out to your, for instance, second and third years and figure out where they went to did their internships. I would say, in my opinion, the first internship that they do is not that critical. Where it becomes important is in the summers between their second and third year, and the all-important internship between their third and their final year. These are called sophomore and junior internships, right? So let's say there's a student majoring in economics and really wants to get into banking. Now, one of the things that a career coach will tell them, and by the way, they may not hear this from their classmates, right? Because they're all in it, pursuing the same things. So a career advisor or a career coach will tell them, if you want to do banking, you better realize this in your sophomore year, because that's when banks are actually coming in to start hiring students. There is actually a very structured path for 2 things. One is banking and one is consulting. Now, others will come and tell you that depending on what you see yourself doing, it is helpful to go to universities that have a high density of these companies. So if you want to do banking and that is your goal, or you think that is a possibility, as an international student, it would be helpful to be on the East Coast. Why? Because that's where the banks are. Okay. If you want to do manufacturing or you're interested in engineering, you have a wider choice. The Midwest is perfectly nice to be there as well. If you want to do technology, right? Obviously, the West Coast would be a great spot, as is the East Coast, as is Austin. So here is where a coach can come in and provide that clarity. But what if you are in, let's say, in Chicago, which is a big city. Actually, let's not do Chicago. Let's say you're in Ohio. What do you do then? That is when you begin to expand your network. Writing thoughtful emails to people, whether it be the East Coast or the West Coast or anywhere else, creating that relationship becomes important. All of this requires time and focus. So understanding where the jobs are, where are they posted? Nowadays, it's LinkedIn, it's Indeed, it could be the college board, the jobs board that is offered by the university. But the short answer is really the exploration part is important. And no matter where you are, creating that network for yourself, creating this professional network, reaching out to family and friends, having those conversations is what sets you up for success.
Thanks, Vaiju. I think the next one seems to be for Sherman. So Sherman, you did mention about the 800,000 investment. Does this investment also come back, or is it like something that you just have to spend and it does not see the light of the day after that?
No, it's a good question. The key language in the State Department's program, this is a government-run, U.S. government-run program, is that the immigrant investors' investment must be at risk. So there's no guarantee that the money comes back. However, quality firms, like ourselves, focus on putting the capital at risk in very good, very high credit quality projects. And that way we minimize that risk. And we take it very seriously that our intent from day one is to return your capital to you after the process. And there's typically a nominal return during the 7 years. It is not, at the end of the day, a financial investment. There's many places that you could put your money that would drive a better financial return. But the way that we think about it and talk to our families, our client families about it, and we have now over 1,000 client families, is that you're making a strategic family decision. And that strategic family decision is to have a connection to the United States or potentially to Europe. And, it's often based on education. Probably 60 to 70% of our client families are making this investment because they have a son or daughter who is passionate about going to school in the United States and that they want to start their career there. They may wind up coming home after a few years, but they are determined to go to the United States for school and then to start working for an American company to get some good experience at the beginning of their career. And the EB-5 investment, really helps with that and makes it easier and breaks down barriers and hurdles and enables companies to hire and, makes it a little bit easier to gain admission. So for many families, it becomes as I said, a strategic family decision. The capital is at risk, but if you work with a quality firm in the EB-5 industry, you should get your money back and you should get a nominal financial return during the process.
Thanks, Sherman. So another one for you, Vaiju. What are the top requirements that any recruiter would want to see in a candidate? I mean, what is it that they should all prepare for? I mean, that's $1 million question, but yeah.
I know. So there is an organization called the National Association of Colleges and Employers, NACE, and that actually surveys employers and say, what are you looking for in candidates? And they do this on a yearly basis or every other year, and they publish that list. So what we've seen is the last 2 years, problem solving, critical thinking, communication has actually risen to the top of the list. But they're equally focused on digital competencies. So they want the technical know-how, being able to work with computers, Excel sheets, all that has become very, very important. But problem solving is top, which means students really have to focus in their education. Where am I getting these problem solving skills from? And this is where a career coach can also come in and tell them, are you taking the right classes where you can demonstrate that you have the skills that the employers are looking for? So understanding skills gap analysis. How do I know what I bring to the table and what the employer wants and how do I make that fit well? It's a job of a career coach as well to help understand this. So students can definitely start reading job descriptions to see what employers are actually looking for, because they tell you what they want in those positions.
Right. Shaman, another one on EB5. If the process, can you walk us through a little bit about the process, in the sense that if somebody were to apply today and then they go off to the US, in how much time can they actually expect the green card, and how can it help? What are the other visa routes that they may have, and how does this help?
Well, I'll quickly talk about the EB5 process, and then there's certainly some other options that you have. The EB5 process is approximately a 5 to 7 year process. It starts with your application. It's called an I-526 application. You need to find 2 people to work with. You need to find an immigration attorney in the United States, and you need to find a firm, like LCR. We're a market leading firm. There are a handful of other firms that we respect in our industry that are our competitors, but you want to find a quality firm that can manage the investment. And you have to have an immigration attorney to file the application for you. So let's say January 1 of 2023, you start the clock and you file your application. And let's say you have a son or a daughter who's 17 years old. When you do that, approximately 2 to 2.5 years after you file the application, you should receive an approved I-526 application. And that application then gets you you have a consular interview with the United States consulate in your country, and then you get a conditional green card. That conditional green card gives you all the rights and privileges of a permanent green card, but you're in what's called the conditional period, sustainment period, and you then your student, if that 17-year-old, when you applied, they're now a rising sophomore, they could apply for internships in the United States and would not need sponsorship. So that's one of the key benefits. And hopefully by applying, they also took them out of the international student applicant pool and considered them as a domestic applicant. And that also could help their chances getting into a more competitive school. And so they'll get the benefits of it, from that 2.5 year mark where they get their conditional green card. About 3 years later, 2.5 to 3 years later, the conditions are removed, and your family has a permanent green card. It's also important to understand that what families often do is that the primary breadwinner does not want to enter the U.S. tax net. And so if that person happens to be the father of the family, then it's often the mother and the child applying for the application. And that way, the father and the primary income of the family stays outside the U.S. tax net. So that's also another consideration. But that's the rough timeline. It's about 5 years. And I say 5 to 7 years because typically the developer that takes the capital will extend the loan for 2 one-year extensions. That often happens. So the capital will be in the real estate project typically for 7 years, but you get your green card typically after 5 years. So that's EB5 process as quickly as I can describe it. Other things that you can do, well, obviously, if you come over just as a student, you would be on an F1 student visa. And then if you're in a STEM program, I mean, Vaiju and Adarsh can talk more about this, but there are things called OPT that would allow you to extend in the United States and potentially get internships as well. But those have short durations and expire after a year or 2 or 3, depending on the program that you're in. So there certainly are other options. There's also H-1B, but that is a lottery. So it really is by chance. It's not by merit. And there are complications to that. So there are other options. We just think if your family, can afford it, EB5 is a smart option if your family's committed to having that connection to the United States.
Thanks, Sherman. I just want to add one more thing here is if the child is over 21, and sometimes even if not over 21, the child can very much, the student themselves can be the principal applicant. And if they're already in the US on an F1 or some other, or maybe an H1B also, and then they apply for an EB5, they can actually hop on to a employment permit that's linked to the EB5, right? And which completely takes them off from the H1B queue. And that's a huge game changer. This was not the case before. This is the latest regulations. So again, students who are already in the US, they're already, or maybe young professionals already on an H1B, frustrated with the long, time that it will take for them to naturally convert to a PR, could find this as a very, very interesting option. So that's something I would also add. Another question for others: how can one be ready for college, and what are the things that as a student and as a parent you need to keep in mind before going off to college?
So that's a broad question.
Catch all. It's a catch all. Yeah.
Getting ready for college, the reason the application process is so lengthy, and they are expecting you to build multiple areas, right, holistically, is one of the ways, right? I mean, you can sort of potentially grow. So what we do with students, is to make them, leave them to sort of decide, and their decision making skills are very important, right? So important to be able to, the student should be able to take the right decisions. For the parent, very important to have productive and open conversations with the child, right? He's going to be going to the US, or life is only going to get harder, right? There is a lot of support system in our country, which, fairly hand holding and, helping admission counselors and additional, support from the school. You are on your own out there, right? So parents have to sort of, be able to also, they must participate in understanding the nuances of, what it takes, how easy or difficult the standardized test could be, not creating any pressure. I think admission is a very happy process, and everybody has a place to go to where they will, where they'll find their unique passion, right, which they may want to sort of succeed with. So working on the soft skills, like like Vaiju mentioned about, the problem solving skills and basic things like Microsoft Excel and the power of networking, LinkedIn, how to navigate that, how to write crisp emails. This is what we as coaches do, right, in terms of the guidance, right, in terms of the handholding. One of the important factors which Sherman, I just want to highlight it again, that if you can afford EB5, it is one of the most intelligent decisions you can make, right? Consider this like a investment we make, right, for any of the properties we do in India. And obviously, US is not open forever. This is not Canada, right? So it's only very limited. And if the child has that mindset, and you, tons of opportunities open up, right, the moment you have the US green card, and a lot of openings sort of come your way. So if a student has a clarity that, they want to go and pursue a psychology degree without the math, for example, then EB5 is a very intelligent decision for which will help them settle down, right? For STEM programs and courses, yeah, I mean, you can sort of find the fix, but it's a very right investment if a parent wants to sort of see, because US is US, with the way things are coming up across all the different domains. If you have an entry which is long term, it's an asset.
Thanks, Adarsh. I think we'll take one last question. I think this can be answered by either Vaiju or Adarsh. What is the difference between a career mentor and an admissions counselor?
Vaiju?
I don't know if I have the definition for a career mentor. You're either a career advisor. I would label myself as an advisor or a coach. And there are subtle differences between an advisor and a coach. An admissions counselor actually looks at things till the student gets into college, right? Working typically with a student, let's say a high school student perhaps, and gets them ready to matriculate into college. A career coach will actually take in from there. And from my perspective, I see myself not just as a career advisor, but also as an academic advisor, because this is something I've done both at Purdue University as well as at Columbia, where I advised students on course selections. And one of the things that I did, even before I was a career coach, was to ask them what kind of jobs they see themselves doing, and use college as a platform to pick up skills as well. In addition to broad things like reading, writing, critical thinking, you also want to take these courses strategically. So that is where a solid advisor can come in and really help you navigate the 4 years of undergraduate, or the 2 years of a master's program, or even the 5 years of a PhD program, right? You look at it as a way to grow, as a way to build skills, as a way to understand, how do I set up myself for success for a lifetime of work? And some of these skills have infinite shelf life and some don't. So understanding the difference between that. Also understanding what are some hot areas in the 21st century. So gene editing is big. Robotics is big. AR, VR is big. So some of the things that we do as career advisors is, constantly we are looking at the labor force as well, and getting feedback from recruiters, from HR, from hiring managers, on what kind of skills they value and where they see, students with specific skills succeed while others don't. So getting a breadth of knowledge as well as the depth, both are important, right? And you don't have to do everything in the 4 years you're in college. Like I said, we set you up for a, excuse me, we set you up for a lifetime of success by focusing on specific skills that I think would be valuable in the 21st century. So again, a solid career coach is someone you would stay in touch with periodically for the rest of your career journey.
Absolutely. I think having a mentor at every stage of life is extremely, extremely important. It's not just during admissions or recruitment. Throughout life, you need people to mentor you and take you through. So this was a lovely discussion. Thank you, everybody, for making the time. And I hope the audience got some very good insights from this. Thank you, Kulajify. Thank you, CSA. And thank you, Sherman, and the rest of my team here at LCR. And I wish you all a very good Sunday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.